All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ingrid Heckel. I'm a conservation and land use specialist with the DEC's Hudson River Estuary Program through a partnership with Cornell University. Thank you very much for joining us this evening for this virtual Conservation Roundtable program. And thanks to my partners at the Capital District Regional Planning Commission, Mohawk Hudson Land Conservancy, and the DEC's Mohawk Hudson River Basin Program, who helped to pull this event together, and to all of our invited speakers. We began hosting the roundtable about 5 years ago to highlight the work of municipal conservation advisory councils, or CACs, and county level environmental management councils, and other municipal groups like climate smart task forces that are working on conservation and sustainability efforts around the capital region. We wanted to create a forum to encourage networking and collaboration among these groups, as well as to promote the establishment of new councils or committees in communities that don't have them. And I took this picture on the left from our last roundtable event held in January 2020, which turned out to be the last public event I held before the COVID lockdown began in March. And hopefully you have all been staying healthy, and fingers crossed we'll be able to gather in person again soon. In the meantime, we decided to hold this event virtually this year to highlight some of the great projects that you've managed to carry out despite the challenges of the global pandemic. Okay, so tonight we're pleased to share 3 case studies from the towns of New Lebanon in Columbia County and Guilderland in Albany County, and the Tomhannock Reservoir Watershed in Rensselaer County. Note that participants have been muted. You should be able to answer questions, you may ask questions as we go along using the chat function. And Martin Daly from CDRPC will be helping to moderate and take a few questions during or between presentations. And we're aiming to leave at least the last 15 minutes for additional Q&A and some brief announcements. In addition, the webinar is being recorded and will be posted to CDRPC's website along with the slides later this week. So before we get started, we are interested in getting a snapshot of who is here with us tonight. So let's do a quick poll. I'm going to launch this. And so please tell us which groups or organizations you represent, your affiliations. And when you're done, you can hit submit, I think. And we'll just give you a couple of seconds to fill that out. Great. So looks like we have good representation from CACs and similar committees and open space committees, climate smart task forces, and some other folks, elected officials, agency staff, and nonprofits. Great. I'm going to share the results. So it's really great to have this broad representation here with us this evening. And hopefully next year we'll be able to hold this event in person and again have more of that networking time, so for you to meet each other. Okay, stop that. And so in the interest of keeping our screen time brief, we're foregoing the usual go around of municipal updates, but after the program you'll receive a link to a written summary of updates that were provided by some communities, and I wanted to share just a couple of highlights. In spite of COVID, we saw the establishment of 2 new conservation advisory councils in the Capital District an area last year, in the town of East Greenbush in Rensselaer County and in the village of Athens in Greene County. And in addition, the town of North Greenbush also recently established an open space committee. 3 communities began working on natural resource inventory projects, including the city of Rensselaer and towns of Niskayuna and Princetown. Rensselaer County is moving forward with planning for a new county park at the Fort Orange Paper Company site in Castleton. There's a picture here on the right. And the Clifton Park Open Space Committee has partnered with the Open Space Institute to try to acquire the Stony Creek Reservoir property in southern Saratoga County, which the town of Colony is selling. And we'll hear a brief update about that effort and what other towns can do to support it at the end of the program. So many thanks again to all of you, to our invited speakers, and to my fellow event organizers. Keep in mind that our institutions are a resource, and let us know how we can support your efforts. Next up, Jill Henk from the Capital District Regional Planning Commission will introduce our first set of speakers. Thanks, Jill.
Well, first I wanted to start by thanking Ingrid for all of her hard work. There's a lot of behind the scenes work that couldn't have been done without Ingrid. So thank you for putting this all together. We're here because of you. I just wanted to start by commending the town of New Lebanon on their work in both the Climate Smart Communities and the Clean Energy Communities program. I've worked with this municipality for probably about 2 years now, and they moved through both of these programs in record time. Steve and Mark are both here to talk about their experience, but also some kudos should go to their town supervisor, Tisria Hodling, as well as Bruce Schenker, who's on the Climate Smart Task Force, as well as their entire task force. They've really pulled it together and made a great deal of progress in a very short amount of time. So nice work to you. So just starting with Mark Anthonison, he is a Master's of Public Administration student at Cornell Institute for Public Affairs. He's focusing on environmental policy. He's a volunteer advisor to the New Lebanon, New York Climate Smart Communities Task Force and has played a crucial role in the ability of the Climate Smart Communities Task Force to achieve its goals. Steve Powers is the chair of the Climate Smart Communities Task Force in New Lebanon, and he is also a member of the New Lebanon CAC. Although he majored in environmental studies in college, he has worked in the travel trade, arranging tours for clients for the last 40 years. In that time, he has set up and run 2 nonprofits focusing on conservation in Nepal, where he lived for 18 years. So I will turn it over to Steve and Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Give me 1 second. All right. Well, thanks to Jill, Ingrid, and the CDRPC and the other sponsors for inviting us to present today. And we'll try to get this to work. Okay, not moving. Technical issues here. Give me 1 second. Try it again. All right, now that's working real well. Okay, there we go, that worked. Anyway, thanks to everybody for attending. My name is Steve Powers, as was mentioned, and I'm the chair of New Lebanon's Climate Smart Communities Task Force, or the CSC as we call it. I'm joined by our advisors, you heard Mark, and we'll give you some perspective on, he'll give you some perspective on his efforts to make the CSC here so successful. For those who don't know where New Lebanon is, here you can see we are in the northern part of Columbia County on the border with Massachusetts. And also for those who are not familiar with the CSC, I just wanted to give you a brief introduction. The CSC is a voluntary New York State program that towns can join to find ways to minimize their carbon footprint and reduce greenhouse gases. New Lebanon's town board set up a task force in February 2020 and approved the members at a April 2020 meeting. They passed a resolution. Since it was a new committee, the town opened up to everyone who applied, which in retrospect wasn't maybe the best strategy. For those who are starting one, I recommend limiting the number and interviewing applicants prior to confirming it, but you know, it all worked out in the end. Town board made it a requirement that there be 3 members of the CAC on the CSC, which probably helped us stay the course. Anyway, the CSC has a list of about 115 actions that we can choose from to achieve the initial bronze level of 120 points. What you're looking at became my Bible throughout the years. We poured over each item to see if the town had completed any of them already, or we had the ability to do them. We completed and submitted 25 action items, as you can see here, to the DEC on December 8th, and were notified on February 26th that we had achieved bronze level. These are the items that we submitted, and you can see how we kept track of them during the year. We set up the spreadsheet and filed what was done, what was filed, and checked them at least 3 times after we submitted them before the deadline. We also set up Google's Doc account to store and share everything with the task force members. And this was the result. We got the special bronze logo. As Jill mentioned, we're the first town in Columbia County and quite possibly the fastest in the history of the program. So how do we do it? Well, it's top secret. We can't reveal that information. No, we will. It was, I refer to it as a result of a perfect storm of events. It started with a new responsive town board being elected. And I would add a lot of the credit goes to Bruce Schenker, who was our town's representative to the Environmental Management Council, and who for years attempted to get the town boards to pass a resolution to become a climate smart community, only to get shot down. So thank you, Bruce, for your perseverance. The new board finally agreed to take up the proposal and accept it. Along with the new board came a new supervisor, Tistria Hoetling, who in her previous position as town clerk had convinced the previous board to approve actions in the Clean Energy Communities Program, the CEC. Those actions allowed us to get points from the CSC program as well. So we had a head start with 3 action items that just needed completing. And Tistria has also been very supportive of our efforts, as well as being instrumental in pushing the county supervisors to make Columbia County a CSC. So our initial strategy, which I recommend to all, is to review what your town has done already and build on that. We built a town website, or web page on the town website. And when we started last April, we were in the depths of COVID and things looked pretty grim in terms of state funding for the town. So we committed not to pursue any actions that involved additional costs for the town. And we actually achieved bronze at no expense to the town at all. COVID-19 did play a key factor in our success, ironically. Our advisor, Mark, who will speak later, was working on his master's at Cornell, but decided to move to his sister's house in New Lebanon to avoid the potential campus spread. And he was gracious enough to volunteer as an advisor. And his previous work advising the CSC staff on a Cornell project was instrumental, I think, in ensuring our success. My previous work in selling travel, as Jill mentioned, basically dried up, and I had at least a year hiatus that allowed me to concentrate on the CSC. So this perfect storm of events, combined with a great group of volunteers who were dedicated to reducing our carbon footprint here, meant that we were off to a great start. But one of the keys, I think, it allowed us to achieve our goals was the excellent guidance we received from Jill, who kept us on track and made sure that we had the tools that we needed. So thank you, Jill. You were a great partner in all this. One of the first programs we pursued was composting, because task force members were interested and it seemed pretty innocuous. And that was another concern an effort that Mark and I made from the start, which was not offending members of the community who didn't see the need to address climate change or who were outright climate change deniers. Yes, I know, believe it or not, they do exist. So we tried to avoid actions that might stir up resentment. We produced a video, and the previous slide was of the video that was done by Jenna, one of our members. And we also had flyers that were put up on the website and distributed at the farmers market. I'd like to turn it over to Mark now to discuss the farmers market and the bike program and the free store. So take it away, Mark.
All right, thank you, Steve. First of all, I also just want to give a thanks to Jill for her help, and also to the town of New Lebanon for welcoming me here and inviting me to work with them over the past year. So as Steve said, I'm doing a degree in environmental policy at the Cornell Institute of Public Affairs. I'm actually retooling for a second career. My prior career was working in finance for the past 25 years. So I'm now retooling to work on climate change. So this was a great opportunity to sort of roll up my sleeves and get involved at the grassroots level. One of the initiatives that we came up with was a bicycle recycling program. It's actually modeled off of a similar program in Ithaca. And what we discovered is that every town has hundreds of bikes in their barns and garages that are not being used because kids grew up or somebody stopped biking. And there's also been a shortage of bikes because of the pandemic. So through myself and a couple other volunteers, we were able to start fixing up bikes. In general, it's a very low cost operation. The town gave us some support in terms of legal support. They provided a waiver for legal cover, and the town provided insurance to cover the program. But overall, it was a zero cost operation, and we're now up to about 100 bikes that have either been repaired for redonation or repaired for residents. So that's an amazing outcome. And this is one of our volunteers fixing up one of the bikes. The other thing I'll say about the bike program is that it had an outsized impact. As Steve mentioned, we have a pretty politically polarized community, but nobody hated this program. This was not like introducing a solar farm in your backyard, which can be pretty polarizing. The bike program really seemed to bring people together. So it had an outsized impact in terms of winning hearts and minds and getting people to buy into what we're doing. And here you can see our booth at the farmers market in New Lebanon. We're introducing the community composting. If you put a couple bikes out front, we found people always come over to look at the bikes and talk about them. And we had many, many very interesting conversations with our residents in New Lebanon at this booth. All right, next slide. Yeah, here's someone signing a bike waiver for a bike. So it all happened at the farmers market, which is a tremendous asset from a climate perspective and also from a community resilience perspective. All right, next slide, Steve. Okay, the other thing I want to highlight is New Lebanon, thanks to our supervisor, Tistria Houtling, already had the concept of a free store, which recycles clothing and toys for residents. And this was at our town hall. The Climate Smart Task Force actually took this over and helped expand it over the past year, which was especially important during the pandemic. So we did like a clothing drive and coat drive that generated a huge amount of clothing for our residents. And this was actually an action that we were able to submit for the Climate Smart program. We did not submit the dog. The dog stayed with us, but everything else went to our residents. Next slide, Steve. Here we are collecting coats at the farmers market. And next slide. Yeah, so this was the giveaway. It was covered in the local media, very well attended by our residents. The other thing I wanted to highlight is that we're starting to look now at resilience actions. So for my part, what I did as part of my degree is basically any homework assignment I had, I would sort of turn it into a project for New Lebanon. So I did a vulnerability assessment looking at seasonal drought. But we now have another team from Cornell is doing a climate vulnerability assessment looking at all hazards. And this is very important for for any municipality, in New York State is, try to project out how climate change is going to affect the town from a risk management perspective. So this is a heavier lift. This requires a bit of scientific analysis and engagement with the community, but we think this is a very important action. It helps inform our hazard mitigation plans for both the town and the county. And as we look towards, getting silver, a lot of our focus is going to be on resilience planning. All right, thank you, Steve. Steve, do you want to talk about the Facebook page?
Sure. One of the action items is setting up a social media account, and so Facebook was critical. We actually have an ongoing subcommittee that submits posts. We try to do at least 2 or 3 a week, and they've been very prolific in putting up things relating to climate change and other actions in the town. We also had a relationship with the farmers market. As a bird just crashed in my window. Okay. In the one of the action items is buy local, buy green, and they were very cooperative and actually came up with a logo. Local is green, and we continue to support the local farmers market, and virtually they have a virtual program during the winter. And they in turn are promoting us as well. Community solar is one of the ongoing programs that we're working on now and in the future. Mark, if you want to jump in on anything, feel free to.
No, Steve, we're running short on time, so
okay, good.
You just keep going.
Town hall lighting upgrades were done recently, and of course, we try to promote everything we can in the local papers. And just to summarize some of the factors that we look to, and having a small town is certainly a big factor. There's only, I think, less than 3,000 people in New Lebanon. And, the messaging was critical, I think, in terms of not offending people, but promoting what we've done. It's amazing that we were able to get as far as we did. And of course, the other thing is amazing volunteers. So if you have them, you're all set. And looking at ahead, the road to silver, as you mentioned, community greenhouse inventory is one thing we're working on, EV charging station, and also, as Mark mentioned, the resilience planning. And I think that was it. All righty. Well, thank you all again. And I don't know if we're taking questions now or later.
Yeah, I'll just take this moment to remind folks, if they do have questions, please use either the chat function or Q&A session. And any of our moderators, I'll call our moderating team, will be able to relay those to the speakers when we see an opportunity to. So, we really want to encourage our audience to ask questions. Don't be shy. That's the great thing about Zoom. You don't have to stand up in a public meeting in front of a bunch of folks. You can type your question in here, and there are no dumb questions. I mean, this is a good opportunity to exchange ideas. So please take advantage of that, those two functions to ask a question. We'd love to pass those along. Why don't I take this opportunity to jump in and introduce our next set of speakers. Tonight we have 3 representatives of the town of Guilderland joining us: Ken Kowalczyk, the Director of Planning; CJ Gallup, Director of Parks and Recreation; and Zainab Taz, Senior Planner and GIS Coordinator for the town. Zainab will highlight a partnership between the town and the University of Albany Masters in Regional Planning Program Studio Project, led by my colleague Kate Maynard, to identify connections and develop trail maps within the town. CJ will talk about how the town identifies lands of conservation value and what lands they would like to preserve. Ken will talk about the town's current efforts to conserve open space and enhance connectivity between destinations and the town's plan to rezone the open spaces to what's called the Open Space District. He'll walk you through that. And then CJ will bring us home with details about the town's efforts in branding and promoting these initiatives. So with that, I'll turn it over to Zainab.
Thank you, Martin. Hi everyone, my name is Zainab and I'm the Senior Planner and GIS Coordinator with the Town of Guilderland. Today I'll be providing an overview of the draft Guilderland Bicycle and Pedestrian Connectivity Study, a product of a partnership between the Town of Guilderland and the U Albany MRP Program Planning Studio with Kate Maynard as instructor. Let me full screen mode, okay. Studio members and the town staff worked together in 2020 spring semester to build a framework for the town's desire to improve livability by making bicycling and walking a safe, viable, and attractive mode of transportation in Guilderland. The study identifies and inventories existing bicycle and pedestrian facilities as well as natural, recreational and historic resources within and outside of Guilderland. It was critical to examine the existing environment as well as Guilderland's geographic and demographic characteristics to develop a comprehensive trail network. The study recommends the addition of, let me zoom in a little bit. The study identifies and, recommends the addition of 70 miles of on-road and off-road trails to the existing 36 miles of trail network. A comprehensive approach was implemented while developing the trail network, consisting of research and analysis, the needs and desires of the community captured from the public meeting held in March 2020, stakeholder interviews, the proposed and planned local and regional trails by a range of organizations, agencies, municipalities, and private entities, and review of past plans and studies. The other component of the study includes design alternatives for a consistent branding and wayfinding of the trail system, as you can see here, that will advertise trails better to the potential users and even the lifelong Guilderland residents who are concerned that there are trails they had no idea existed. The students also included a funding section in the report which provides information on various funding opportunities at state and federal levels that could be available to Guilderland to explore the potential trail.
Zainab, I know you have a really excellent and well put together presentation. Did you want to screen share that right now so folks can follow along with you?
Oh, it's not shared?
Nope, not yet.
Oh God, I'm sorry.
That's okay. There's a lot of great stuff on this presentation.
Yes, I'm so sorry. Can you see now?
Yeah, we can see it now if you want to just make it full screen. We will also archive these presentations. So if there's a particular area that our audience is interested in, we will have these available after the event as well. So people will have the opportunity to come back and check out something they may have missed or something they want more information on. So yes, we can see it. If you want to make it just a little bit smaller, we can really zoomed into some of the great pictures you have there. And I think people will have that opportunity after the event, but we can see it really beautifully now. Thank you very much.
Okay, I was going to talk about the prioritization tool. The results, to further improve the draft study, we also developed an interactive map to be able to prioritize the recommended connections. This interactive tool enables the public to rank the recommended trail routes from low to high priority. The interactive prioritization tool also comes with an online survey, as you can see here. Aims to collect data on user characteristics, bicycling and walking behavior, level of comfort on a variety of bicycle facility types, and general comments and feedbacks. The result of the prioritization tool will be contributing to a final score with 11 other factors ranging from road type to population density, and key projects will be identified and grouped into a 3-category priority ranking based on their cumulative score. With key projects identified, the town can then pursue important next steps like identifying project-specific funding, land acquisition, and communicating with other partners along proposed alignments, such as utility companies, impacted residents, and property owners. If you want to take the survey, you can just click on the link that I put on the PDF document. I just want to show you how you can prioritize the trails. Hit OK. And once you click on the trail here, just hit the Smart Editor tool, and here you can rank the selected road here from low priority to high priority, and then you'll just save your input. And then you can...
Zeynep, you may need to do another screen share to show that tool.
Oh, you cannot see this either?
No.
Are you using 2 screens by any chance?
Actually, it says you are screen sharing. You're not able to see my screen?
We are able to see the presentation.
Oh, not the tool?
Sometimes when you open up new windows, this has happened to me quite frequently. It's aggravating. Sometimes when you open up a new window, Zoom doesn't know that you opened up a new window. So maybe if you stop screen sharing and then click screen share again, you'll trick the system. And then just hit it again, and it may update.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, technology is supposed to make our lives easier. I just think it makes them complicated in a different way. There you go. We can see that. That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Now, once you click on a trail here, and the list here will appear that you can submit your score from low priority to high priority to prioritize the selected route, and you can provide your comment, and then just have to save it. And then if you want to take a online survey, you can just, I don't know if you're seeing this now.
Yep.
Okay. And here's the online survey that you can take. Okay. I think I pretty much covered the basics of the project. Before I hand it over to CJ, if you have any project ideas or questions, you can contact the studio instructor, Kate Maynard, at this email address here, provided below.
Great, thank you so much.
Can you see the screen now?
I can see the questions relating to the survey instrument.
Oh God.
It's okay. One thing that gives us the opportunity to do is we'll certainly archive this material, including links to the resources you're sharing, because there's a lot of information here that's really great that I know people, if they're trying to scribble and keep up with it, they're not going to be able to. So provide people with the opportunity to view all these resources after the event. And that way, if folks want to come back to it, they'll have that opportunity to.
All right.
Hey, Zeynep, do you want to scroll down to the next screen, and I'll kind of go over stuff next?
Are you able to see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay,
You might want to just put it on full screen. Okay, there we go.
yes.
And then go back to the identifying areas to preserve slide. There we go. My name is Ken Kowalczyk. I'm the town planner for the town of Guilderland. I'm going to kind of add some context to Zeynep's discussion. One of the things she highlighted was, how do we prioritize trails? How do we prioritize areas that maybe the town wants to conserve? And I'm going to focus on how we do that through development applications, whether it's a subdivision application, special use permit, site plan. So we have various sections of our town code. This 28035 is our cluster and conservation subdivision section, which you can see here. There's many provisions within our code that talks about the importance of protecting open space corridors, view sheds, historic and archaeological areas, wildlife corridors. So that kind of sets the groundwork for our planning board as they start looking at a subdivision or a site plan. Next slide, please, Zaina. So I wanted to highlight some projects that have either been approved or are under review. First, up top here, the town is currently reviewing a 58 lot cluster subdivision that recently received preliminary plat approval. It's 58 single family lots. It's a 100 acre site, but out of that 100 acres, the town is able to conserve 66 acres. And out of that 66 acres, roughly half of that was conveyed to the town for town parkland. And then the other half was conserved via conservation easements that will be implemented on each of those 58 lots. So that's a good tool that municipalities can use to preserve land is through that conservation or cluster subdivision. And I think this 58 lot subdivision is a good indicator of that. Now, as part of that subdivision, we're also getting sidewalks internal to the subdivision, and then there will be hiking trails also that will be developed through that subdivision as well. The other I wanted to highlight is the Winding Brook Drive projects. And Zeynep, could you zoom in on that a little bit? So there's 3 separate projects here that are worthy of recognition. One is a senior apartment project. And Zeynep, are you able to zoom in on that a little bit? On the Winding Brook Drive projects?
Yes.
So they're the furthest right, you'll see Hiawatha Independent Senior Living Facility. That is a 256 unit senior living project of apartments. The total acreage for the site was 43.8 acres. The developer is conveying 23.7 acres of that site to the town as parkland. So that roughly equates to about 52% of the total project site was conveyed to the town as parkland. The green dotted lines are trails that the developer will be installing as part of that project. So that's a good example of how through a development, a municipality can obtain open space and have the developer carry the costs of putting the trails in, which are not cheap. It's about if you were to do a grant funded project, it's about $1 million to put in 1 mile of sidewalk. So, when you're putting in sidewalks or multi-use trails, the more you can get a developer to pay for it, the better. This project wasn't without opposition. The town was actually sued over this. We successfully defended it. There were proposals to put single-family homes and townhomes across the entire site, but the town was able to work with the right developer. The landowner was able to work with the right developer as well, which the town feels is a win-win for all. You know, we have apartments that serve an aging population, and we were able to obtain a large amount of open space. The second is the Winding Brook Commons project, which is a planned unit development that's currently under review. That project, the total acreage is 57.5 acres, 30.4 will be dedicated to the town. So again, that's roughly about 52% of the project site is going to be dedicated to the town as open space, with the developer putting in the trail system for that, which would link up with the Hiawatha Trails project. That is abutting the Guilderland YMCA. So you've got destinations for the surrounding subdivisions in this area that will be able to, you know, walk to the YMCA. The library is also located here, along with St. Peter's Hospital has a nursing facility and a recovery center also in this area, and then the Guilderland Elementary School. And then the last project, which is currently under construction, is the Winding Brook. Yeah, if you want to zoom back in on that, Zainab, the Winding Brook Townhome project. That was a 52-unit townhome project. It was 26 acres site, but as you can see here, out of that 26 acres, the town is able to have the developer convey 19.4 acres to the town as open space. So as you see, you know, a lot of these projects don't all occur at once, but the total for these three projects is over 73 acres of open space that the town was able to obtain for implementing these trails. And then let's, the Watervliet Reservoir Recreation Plan. So the Watervliet Reservoir is actually owned by the city of Watervliet. They are currently working with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission on relicensing of the hydro dam that is out here. As part of that relicensing, the Department of Environmental Conservation is requiring some type of public access and recreation amenities to be included as part of that licensing. So the lines on the map here are just showing proposed trails that we can get to the reservoir for public fishing and possibly hunting. We have asked for non-motorized access as well, but that may not occur. So this is something that the town is working with the city of Watervliet and DEC on currently to include additional trails as part of that relicensing. And then, yeah, let's do the Vosburg ones next, Zainab. So I want to highlight a couple projects here quickly. One is the 20 West subdivision. Was a 74 lot single family subdivision on 181 acres. The town was able to, through that subdivision review, have the developer convey 70 acres of land. So that equates to about 38% of the project site was conveyed to the town as open space. And that really started their development of our Vosburg trail system. So between this site and adjacent 54 acres that the town owned, and then another subdivision, you'll see their French's Mill Estate subdivision. That was a, I believe that was a 94 acre site with 24 single family lots. Their developer conveyed 52.7 acres or 53 acres to the town as open space. That equates to about 56% of the overall project site was conveyed to the town. I'm going to let CJ Gallup talk a little bit about the trails that he's planning to develop there. Actually, Zainab, could you zoom back in on that for a second? So I think this provides a good overview of you've got multiple subdivisions that were able to be linked via the open space that the town obtained through development review. You can see how important the Vosburgh Trail system is with getting access to the Watervliet Reservoir. And then the Vosburgh Trails is adjacent to a lot of high density in this area, so it gets a lot of use. But again, it's not easy. One project that's not shown here, right where 20 West is the Mill Hill apartment project, which was originally approved as a 55 and over condominium development. But the developer came back and had it converted back to apartments and lifted the age restriction. And as part of that development, the town required a sidewalk connection from the apartment project to 20 West. And there was a lot of opposition from the homeowners in 20 West. They did not want to have access provided for the apartment dwellers to get from the apartment project over to the 20 West subdivision, where you could get on a sidewalk system and get to the public trailhead. So a lot of times you're going to have to work through, neighborhood opposition with people trying to keep other people out of, public parks and public streets. But I think this slide provides a good overview of, through multiple subdivision reviews, the town was able to conserve a lot of open space. And with that, I'll turn it over to CJ a little bit to talk about how they prioritize trail development once we get some open space land.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. There's a lot of great information here. And CJ, before you begin, I'm just going to be the bad guy and just let you know we're running behind on time as these things do. So I just want to convey, I hope you can provide us with some brevity on your portion of the presentation, catch us up a little bit. But I know that you have a lot of great information to share. So just remember, we will be archiving this. So just keep that in mind as you move forward. If you can do broad strokes, we will still get your information out there.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll kind of just jump to the importance of preserving some of those corridors. We at the Vosburgh site, we have been able to preserve a Native American sensitive area that dates back to the Archaic period, 2930 BC. And we are sure that our trail is very similar to the Native American trail. So we're really proud that we've been able to preserve that site, and it's become a great linkage point for us. A lot of our parks and trails tend to be loops, and they serve for a good quick lap, a lunchtime loop, I like to call it. But the gold standard is really to connect a path that will reach across the town to from our densely populated areas to the Watervliet Reservoir. And I think that's a pretty good wrap up. We can jump right to our last slide, I think, Zainab. So for getting the word out, I wanted to share the town's branding and promotions to get residents involved and make them aware of what's available. So we have adopted some very simple branding and initiatives to encourage people to get outdoors. Hike Guilderland is our overall branding for the trail system. It's on all our trailhead kiosks and the website, which Zainab showed us there earlier. You can click right on your trail. You can get an interactive experience and a lot of information. So this winter we had a get out and walk campaign. We kept all our parks open and plowed to promote people just to get outside and walk. If you weren't a skier or a snowshoer, you could still use a lot of our parks to get outside during this tough time frame. We promote our trails and parks on social media with a fall photo contest and a trail bingo scavenger hunt. We got a great response from that. The winners of those events, you could get a round of free golf or a free week at the day camp. So we were able to promote in both ways. So we have a great relationship with our school district. We push out a lot of information that way, and we get our programming out to the community. We have a lot of outreach programs, partnering with the Scouts. We achieve a lot of projects that we could never attain with our in-house staff. We're currently designing some suggested routes where we incorporate our sidewalk system and the trail system to really get people back out reconnecting with nature. And we're working on some signage on the main routes through town, because people tend to drive right by on Route 20, and just a half a mile off of Route 20, most of our parks and trails are accessible. So I think that about wraps it up.
Thank you very much for a lot of great details. I want to fire two quick questions at you. We had a couple questions about maintenance. If you could briefly tell us how the town plans to maintain these trails or rely on volunteer efforts to maintain them. And the second question, does the town have an open space or conservation plan that guides what areas to be designated as open space?
So we do have our maintenance crew. We have a full-time crew of 4 at Parks and Rec. And we do most of the maintenance, but we do rely a big portion on volunteers and to keep everything up to snuff. Ken, can you answer that next question?
Martin, you say, does the town have an open space plan?
Right, yeah, to identify parcels of significant value for conservation.
That was one of the purposes of this trail study. So the UAlbany students did do an analysis of, I believe, just about all of the town parks and open space areas, you know, trying to identify where the gaps were in between each of those areas. So, I mean, do we have one document that is an open space plan or a natural resource inventory? No. I know there was, you know, years ago, there was a study done on the Norman Skill corridor for, you know, watershed preservation. This trails plan with the UAlbany students, you know, identified a lot of the town parks and rec areas. You know, one of the next steps for the town that we didn't really get to was there was a slide that shows all of the open space areas in town. You know, one of the next steps is a lot of those open space areas are still, they might still have that single family zoning designation. So for instance, Western Turnpike Golf Course, which I believe is about 280 acres, is still zoned R40. So, you know, one of the next steps that the town wants to do is kind of take an inventory of where all these open space areas are, you know, rezone them to open space, and then kind of doing an analysis, you know, furthering what the UAlbany students did and now making these connections. So I think, you know, a lot of that, those examples that I provided are how we get those connections through development review.
That's excellent. Thank you very much for providing that detail. Again, folks, we'll be archiving these. I'm going to type a couple answers to your questions in the chat to try to catch up on time. I'm going to see if we can, maybe we'll take some of these questions at the end. But I want to thank Ken and CJ and Zeynep for their time presenting on this. There's just so much information. I wish we had time to get all to this. But I'm going to hand it off to our next portion of the presentation with the Rensselaer Land Trust. And joining us today is John Winter. He's the Executive Director of the Rensselaer Land Trust, which is located in Troy. He has served in that role since 2017. RLT, as we know them, the Rensselaer Plateau Alliance and the Agricultural Stewardship Association. Now I'm getting tongue-tied. The Rensselaer Land Trust, the Rensselaer Plateau Alliance, and the Agricultural Stewardship Association are partners in a New York State DEC Division of Water Quality Improvement Program land acquisition grant. That's a lot to say in a breath. John is representing the partners this evening and will share their experience with the program over the past several years. And with that, John, I'm hoping you're more articulate than I am and with that butchered introduction I did. So thank you for joining us this evening.
Well, gosh, Martin, thank you for having me. This is fun, and I appreciate everyone being on the Zoom meeting. I will do my best to be brief because I know you want to stick to your schedule as best as possible. So I'll try to hit the high points, and I will certainly be available if anybody has questions after, if you'd like some more details. Okay. So as Martin said, we have a grant with 2 other land conservation organizations in Rensselaer County to protect drinking water quality in the Tomhannock Reservoir, which is the drinking water supply for more than half of the residents and businesses in the county. We have $1.5 million for the program, and there is a 25% landowner match. It's a 5-year grant that will take us through around this time next year. The municipalities that are involved are Pittstown, Scaghtikoke, and Hoosick Falls. And just a little history here of kind of how we got here is that I'm sure many of you remember a few years back, the drinking water problems in places like Hoosick Falls and Newburgh, and a number of communities in Western New York, which kind of was the spur to create the water quality improvement program land acquisition aspect of this. And there have been 2, actually the 3rd grant round is in process now. So this is kind of a continuing effort to address drinking water quality throughout the state. Our program is a little bit different because our project involves a program versus a project. And what I mean by that is that we have an education component along with the land acquisition itself. And the other difference is that, so let me step back on that just quick. Most of the other grantees had identified the properties that they wanted to protect in advance when they wrote their grant proposals. We took a little bit different tack and said we were looking to recruit kind of the best candidates for land protection in our county, because we had previously worked with DC and others, and in fact Ingrid herself on creating a land conservation plan for the county. So we were looking out to see which of the properties kind of rose to the top. The other thing that we do, as I said before, is speak to best management practices for residential and agricultural landowners in the county around drinking water quality. And I'll go into that a little bit more in a few minutes. So how do we do this? I'm sure most of you on the call would know what I mean when I say conservation easement. Essentially, we are extinguishing development rights on certain properties, and we can buy the properties outright through fee acquisition. We're talking mostly about undeveloped woodlands, agricultural, and open space properties, although we can create easements with structures on them with DEC approval. One of the key kind of pieces of this is that municipal approval for any property that's going to be protected is required. So the town, any of those 3 towns have 90 days to basically, tell us that they prefer that they not be protected. That hasn't happened yet, but that that option is out there. And the other thing that's important is that there is the potential for public access on the fee simple properties that we require. And that has also turned out to be a bit of a challenge in a way that we didn't really expect. And I will explain that a little bit more later. I said before, we have educational components. We have our own website for the program, which is Tomhannock Rural Land. You'll have this after the presentation tonight, so you can go to it. But we built a website that explains the acquisition program and also has a resources page on best management practices for residential and agricultural water quality protection. We also, as part of the program, collaborate with federal and state service providers such as NRCS and Troy. We had 2 Zoom meetings late in 2020 after the pandemic hit on residential and agriculture BMPs, and we'll be following up with outreach on implementation later this year. Prospect recruiting. As I said before, our program is based on us identifying landowners who live whose properties are either within 300 feet of the shores of the reservoir or 100 feet of the tribs that feed it. We identified about 220 potential parcels. We started with kind of 20 plus acres, although we have identified a few that are smaller and a little bit more strategic. And we do outreach to the landowners with a marketing and communications firm called Words That Work that provides us kind of the communications to landowners. And we, one of the things that we do is we send out mostly postcards to Watershed landowners with 20 or so acres. So far, in terms of our status, we've got 2 fee simple acquisitions coming online, both of them in Pittstown, and we've got 10 prospect parcels. All of them, I think all of them right now are all going to be conservation easements for residential, and the rest are ag. So if those all come to a closing, we'll probably end up with about 400 or so acres in protection through the program. And just so people know, because it's often a little bit unclear when we're talking about land protection, what we're mostly doing is these are real estate transactions. Okay, so we're involved with. We're creating kind of a work plan with the landowners. As I mentioned before, we're doing municipal notices. We have to create a public access plan for DEC. We write the press releases. We deal with the appraisals, the phase 1 environmental assessments. We do the surveys, draft the deeds. We do the title exploration and title insurance. We deal with purchase price notifications, the final notices, and the deed drafting. And we deal with the monitoring and stewardship protocols. So all these things are kind of part of the process that we use when we go through these land acquisition transactions with landowners. And I will stress, in case I didn't say it before, all of this is voluntary, on the part of landowners. Okay, and they are compensated. Okay, we are actually purchasing the land. Okay. Or purchasing a conservation easement, which is in our world kind of a wonderful thing, because most of the time those properties are donated, or we request a donation of conservation easements, or request a donation of a property. So it's pretty wonderful for us to be in a position to actually purchase these, and gives us a lot more opportunities than going kind of the traditional route. So a few observations, some things that we've learned doing this for a couple of years, because I will say we'll be passing this information on to DEC as kind of part of our, remember I said before, it's a program, so we'll be identifying for them kind of what we've learned. One of the challenges that we didn't really expect, and we really didn't contemplate, and we should have done our homework a little better, is that the landowners themselves kind of have a limited connection to the reservoir, because they don't actually get their drinking water from it. Okay, their drinking water mostly comes from, well, all of it comes from wells. The water in the reservoir goes mostly towards the western part of the county, city of Troy, and some of the other communities there. So when we talk, and this is mostly more about the best management practices for landowners, there's not such a connection or an incentive for them to implement those best management practices. So we've had to kind of reevaluate kind of how to do the messaging around the communications for implementation of those. Okay. Another thing that we kind of learned along the way was that we're not the only game in town. And for people who are kind of familiar with for this world, the New York State has a farm protection program. Because our match is a higher percentage, we struggle a bit with getting farm-based landowners to participate, because they often get a better deal with the Ag and Markets program. Having said that, that program is more competitive, and so there are fewer kind of farms, selected. So we're kind of, I kind of think of us a little bit sometimes as Plan B for some of these projects. And also, because remember, we started, the whole premise of this is about protecting water quality. Sometimes the water quality goals can conflict, especially with farming practices. And since we have to use DECs, they have a mandatory conservation easement template. Okay, we kind of have to craft in a lot of cases the best approaches to both ensuring that the farmer has a way to make a decent living, which we all know is tough enough these days, while also ensuring that their practices do make or impact the water quality of the tribs as little as possible. All of this, as I said before, has kind of resulted in kind of lengthy transaction periods for landowners. This takes a long time anyway to do. So we always kind of tell our people that they need to be very patient when they're working in these programs, because they can take, as I said, you saw from the grant period is like 5 years, and we're like 4 years in, and we're still, we're still hard at it. So there's more to do. And I'll finish here with kind of next steps. We have to close on our current transactions, as I said before. We have to determine the viable prospects of those remaining 10, because one of the kind of more fascinating parts of this is that DEC has kind of left it to the grantees to determine what are the better prospects, based on what's happening on that on that parcel. Okay, what happens in near the stream, what happens in the buffer, what would we say would be practical. Again, as I mentioned before, what about public access? How does that impact? Okay, so these are all kind of interesting questions that we're answering now with landowners and with DEC. And we're continuing the water quality education, especially checking on implementation of the training that we did previously, and then we'll assess the program for DEC for future rounds. So I will stop there. I didn't want to take any more time, Martin, but if people have questions, I am available.
Yeah, we did have a question. When it comes to the fee acquisitions, who owns them, and is public access allowed?
Yes, one of the partners will own them, and for the two that are fee acquisitions now, we have produced plans for public access. Okay, although it may take a little bit of time for those plans to be implemented, because one of the things that actually there'll be Rensselaer Land Trust properties. One of the things that we always do is we kind of monitor, and maybe that's too strong of a word, because that's kind of official in conservation easement language, but we observe what happens on a property over at least 4 seasons, just to kind of get a sense of what happens there. Okay. Before we do any type of improvements. And when I say, kind of public access improvements, I mean things like cutting trails, putting in a parking lot, putting in information kiosks, putting bridges, where we need them, and any other kind of amenities. So we would own it. We would address, kind of the public access goals but it's probably a little bit more of a long-term endeavor to get actually people there, at least for now.
Excellent. And I'll hit one more and give a chance to kind of open the floor. I know we have an announcement after this, but other than municipal approval of the individual projects, CEs, or acquisitions, are you working with the towns in other ways to advance the educational goals of your program?
Yeah, one of the, as I said before, there's kind of getting the word out about what you might do, okay? And then we're looking towards that same communications firm to help us with assessing kind of who has done stuff and what have they done. And the municipalities will play a big role in kind of helping us identify what those practices were.
Great, thank you. Ingrid, did you want to, there was an announcement, I think, did you want to take over emceeing for a little bit to coordinate that?
Sure. Yeah, so thank you so much, John, and to all of our presenters. Those were wonderful presentations. Let me see. We have a presentation from the town of Clifton Park and from David Miller, who's the chair of the Open Space Committee. And David, I'm just trying to locate you, and I'm going to unmute you. You should be able to speak now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, you can't see me though. Oh, there I am. All right, hold on one second. All right, well, you see my picture anyway. I'm not sure. The screen is all, but you can hear me okay, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thanks.
Well, thanks. And just in a couple of minutes, I chair the Clifton Park Open Space Committee. I've been involved since its inception in 2000 with Supervisor Phil Barrett. And just to give a little context to this announcement, we've been actively involved. Tonight's presentations were just terrific. And we've been actively involved in similar programs over the past almost 20 years now. We've protected 1,500 acres of farmland, woodlands through fee acquisitions, conservation easements, other programs. We have conservation zoning in the western part of town. We have a very active committee, and we have an open space coordinator. I say that all in just providing a context for the project that we're involved in right now. And the project we're involved in right now, and that's the Stony Creek Reservoir. Stony Creek Reservoir is owned by the town of Colony and has been for 70 years. And the town of Colony no longer uses it as a backup water supply. So they are going forward to sell it and have put out an RFP for this project. And I'm announcing it tonight, just that the town has passed resolutions to pursue this, to go after the RFP, to put in a bid. It's 1,000 acres. It's the largest endeavor the town's ever undertaken for a project like this. You may remember we had a project right near the mall in Clifton Park for a Central Park in Clifton Park a few years back that got a lot of press. This is 5 times more the magnitude in cost and so forth. So we've gotten OSI involved, and this is 1,000 acres. It's the 4th largest water body in Saratoga County. And the important thing I wanted to share here is this is a regional resource. It's on the state's open space plan. It's on the county's open space plan. It's on the town's open space plan. It's an important resource that won't just benefit Clifton Park, but benefit the entire capital region. So this brochure that Ingrid's showing on the screen right now will be available for you next week in the link. And we're looking for other regional groups. We have a local group, Friends of Clifton Park Open Space, which is the nonprofit arm to our open space committee that does all the work. That's a formal committee with the town that does all our open space planning work and acquisition work. But we want to get groups from around the capital region to rally around this project, because it's one of the largest open space acquisition projects in the immediate capital region in recent memory. And we'd love to get other people involved in it. And in turn, maybe give an opportunity for us to support you in one of your opportunities down the line too. But we have many people that come to our parks, whether Dwaskill Preserve, Vischer Ferry Preserve, Garnsey Park, other areas. from outside of Clifton Park. And we think this wonderful reservoir, which is just gorgeous. If you can YouTube and see a drone thing of it. It's an incredible resource. No one sees it because it's all closed out. But it's once you see it, it's just incredible for kayaking and hiking and fishing and recreation for the region in the future. So thank you for this opportunity. I probably went over 2 minutes, but I just wanted to give a little context of this exciting project. And it couldn't be better following John Winter, because this is stage one. This is the RFP process. Down the line will be state, federal, county, town funding, all to go forward. The town would own it and it would be a park.
Thanks, David. And we will be sharing the link to that fact sheet and some other information about the project along with.
Can I just say, we put up a petition 2 weeks ago, or I think it was 12 days ago. We already have 1,000 signatures.
Wow.
Just incredible, the support that we hope we can garner for this.
That's great. Well, thank you. And thank you again to our presenters. Martin, I'm not sure what you think. It is just past 8:15 and we didn't want to keep folks on the line too late. So I think we should probably wrap it up, and we will share materials from these presentations and the recording and follow up with you hopefully by the end of this week. All right.
Yeah, thank you very much to our presenters for making time to share their expertise with you. It's, makes for a long day when they're committed to sharing their projects that they're working on from the 9 to 5. So I do want to extend a point of gratitude to all of our presenters who are doing this both professionally and as a passion as well. So thank you for taking the time for us tonight.
Likewise, thank you. All right, take care, everyone.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.